localization. Back in 2001, I started as a UI associate engineer for video games. And doing UI, that means that, and a new guy, I get localization. In video games, a lot of people hate doing localization. It's such a pain. So I got stuck with it. So after many years, I got so sick of it that we decided to write a tool to streamline the entire process. We have gone down from 2 weeks per language to do a release on a video game to now we can do up to 17 simultaneous releases, and that's only because Disney doesn't release to every single language out there. We do lots of return on investment analysis, but we can do that now. The tool I helped write, or actually wrote, has 2 US patents on it. We submitted another 2 that are currently under review, and then this year we did another 2, which is part of the whole automation process and how to streamline localization efforts. So we have gone now. One thing with Disney is we don't have a lot of development in-house. We do a lot of vendor. In the past, it would take us an extremely long time to integrate a developer because everyone did it their own way. Now our average time for an integration under the developer is 10 minutes. From the request that we get in an email to when we can do it. We don't have an engineer that has to do the integrations anymore. We have a producer, a technical producer who knows how to do it, because we've seen it all. One of the things that when you go to a company is they'll either have a certain way that they do their assets. Like usually it's like an Excel file, it could be XML or XLeaf, we've seen, or JSON, we've seen them all. Disney, we allow it all. We don't have to, we don't set developers into a very specific Disney way to do things. So that's opened us up to allow our vendors who used to hate localizing our stuff because we're very strict on what we do, it's not a problem anymore. We've taken that out of their hands, and we'll kind of go over that. So some of the products that helped launch on this tool is Infinity. I'm sure a lot of people heard that. Frozen Fever, Where's My Water? Someone here plays that. I got addicted to that too. Club Penguin, my thing I work on now is Playmation, and then also, I'm sure everyone by now has seen the trailer for Star Wars. So we kind of worked on that kind of stuff as well. So before I begin, I want to go over Disney approach. We look at solving for the impossible. So a lot of the things that we were told are impossible to do in localization, we were challenged to solve them to various degrees of success, but we have yet to be stumped by whatever Disney wants to do. So I challenge that to you when you go out in the field, is think of ways to solve for the impossible. Because there are ways to do it, you just have to think out of the box a lot of times. Topic of this was world beyond localization. I'm going to cover that kind of at the end, like how we're creating the global experience at Disney. But I thought what I would do is go over what we did to get there. So some of the things we've learned along the way, so you can see why what we're trying to do is possible. Because if we thought about this 10 years ago, we thought there was no way to do it. So, go ahead to the first slide here. Stage 1 of localization. I wanted to go over the feelings people have on localization. Step 1, disgust. Oh man, I've got to localize this. This is a pain. I hate doing it. It's yuck. The next one is fear. It's like, now that you've committed to localizing your product, oh my gosh, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on it. What do we do? So stages 3 through 6, this is more for the development and as it goes along. You get angry because you're there in the middle of the night doing things and things change all the time. You get more angry. And still more. And again more. And the 7th stage, just to make sure I'm counting it. And then at the end, you're sad because you realize you got to do this all over again the next week. That's how it used to feel back then. We've changed that, so we'll go over that. The one thing I want to go over is someone much smarter than I did came up with this. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. What I mean by that is just because you have a product, just don't go out there and say, it should be localized. Let's throw it into 50,000 languages and it'll be a great success. Be careful about what you choose and what you go into. Especially when you're, for the people who are starting their careers, don't push something, a language or a product that's not going to do well. Don't be afraid to say no. Just because you can do it, don't. So to that, know your territory. What are you trying to release to? Is the content desired? Know how people ingest content. That's like TV, mobile, or consoles. For instance, there's no point in putting a TV program on an island who has no TVs. So know what you're trying to do. Again, do a return on investment analysis. You know, how much work it's going to take, what you're going to gain. But realize that it is okay to lose money sometimes if you're just trying to establish a foothold within that territory. That is gain. Also, another thing to do, can your technology or your platform handle localization? There are a lot of things that they've been built so badly, you can't localize. And unfortunately, there is a product up here that's mine that wasn't done very well, so we didn't localize it at all. The other thing to know is stylistic differences. And this is one of the things that's very popular in Disney. It's the Tsum Tsums. I'm sure some people here have played it. It actually came from Japan. If you look at the style of the characters, they're that Japanese cutesy is what they refer it to a lot. But they're very different. So know the styles of how other cultures look at your brand, because it can be very different. Okay, so lessons learned. We learned a lot. One of the first things we did at the very beginning was we were told, make your text strings for English 15 to 20, allow for it to be 20 to 15% bigger than what you have. That is actually does not apply, especially with shorter strings like yes or no or something, 2 or 3 letters, because oftentimes they're translated to 5 or 6 letters, so that's like 400% increase. So we found out very quickly that doesn't apply. It also is really bad because it doesn't take into account languages that have very complicated glyphs, like Arabic or Chinese or the Japanese kanji. They're just very, very complex. You actually have to size them up to make them legible, especially on like consoles. So that's another thing to take into account. And then also line spacing issues. Japanese and some other languages are very sensitive where you put a line break. You just can't arbitrarily put a line break in something. So that's something we found out as well. And I'm sure from Mozilla, one thing you definitely want to do, please don't hard code text in anywhere for you engineers. That's just awful. We wrote something that can parse through and pull it out, but it's just a bad idea. And one of the things that people don't realize is formatting. Clock, numbers, like the comma in our numbers. Don't hard code that in either. So just leave the text the way it is and let the translators decide how it's going to be displayed. We also learned that we tried to save money. So if we translated a word, we thought, oh, we could just go ahead and leverage that translation, use it everywhere that instance of the word across the game. Really terrible idea. And I see a lot of people shaking their head. Yeah, that was really bad. One thing we learned early on is don't embed text in images. It's very hard to localize. We solved that problem. So we can do that now. We'll kind of go over how we can do it. The other thing, everyone's rushing to get their product out the door. And so usually that means English first, or the language that you're looking at. I hate to say it at the end, it will come bite you back hard. What we designed at Disney is we have a strike team now in some areas where we have localization experts, someone from technology, someone from design, and someone from QA, look at a product as soon as it's green light lit and say, oh, I can see potential areas where we're going to have a problem. And so you can address those right away at the very, very beginning of the product when no one's stressed out about trying to hit deadlines. That's actually saved us a lot of money in the end. Some other things is, what I mentioned before, is fonts. Not many people think about fonts, they just put it whatever they want. If you change it, just remember there's scaling and appearances you got to do. So be very cognizant of that, what font you're going to pick. The other thing too is, especially on devices that have a limited amount of space. So I have some hardware here. It doesn't have as much, obviously, memory as this. It probably has like less than a gigabyte of memory. You try to do this, and if it had a display and you wanted to put in the entire Chinese character set, it's not going to work very well. So also we do some automatic analysis on that. So next slide. Context is everything. For translators I know out there who do translation work, if you were told something to translate and there's no context, you're not exactly sure how to do it. One of our funny ones is, what is a critter? We sent this out, and all of our translators from our territories came back and like, well, what's a critter? And it was a Bugs Life game that we were working on, so we had to explain that to them. So context is very, very important. A lot of people in English don't understand that. It's a critter, you know. We obviously know what it means. So we found that the example we tell people is this. Play a game or show a picture and say, find me a horn. Okay. Then they start thinking about, well, what kind of horn do you mean? Is it an animal horn? Is it like an instrument horn or this thing on a bike? This is a perfect example of showing how a word in other languages has more context to it. And when you put it to a generalistic term like this, it doesn't work very well. So again, context is very, very important to us. Okay. The other thing we've learned is for text, we have found it's pretty straightforward. What I mean by that is it's a lot easier to get your idea across, and there's more forgiving in translations when it's in text. People can read it and they can glean what the context is from the sentence. But when you go to audio, it blows it way out of the door. There's a whole bunch of things we've got to deal with. So, one of the things we've done is we created style repositories. Basically what that means is, well, a use of terms like names, Belle, Ariel, Woody, how do you translate to other languages? So when we go to a translation vendor or our own, we just say, here is your list of terms. So you should know how to translate it already. So that helps them a lot. It also builds a basis for tone. So one thing we have found is that people, when you translate an asset, especially like a movie or something, they're very sensitive to how the translation is done. You know, it could be really, really bad, or it could be really good. They can pick up on that. So one of the things we like to do is for some products, we'll say, here is information about it. You know, not necessarily the new product, but kind of like where we have done before. So they can look at it and understand what we're trying to do. We have gotten much better translation results since then. One of the worst projects we've had in the past, they had to rewrite the entire translations because the tone was wrong. And another good example for a tone, or like how you break things up, is the word gun. Gun is okay for Disney, for Marvel, or Star Wars. They call them blasters in Star Wars. But you can't mention the word gun in a kid's game. It's not really good. So you have to come up with these creative names of what to do for kids. So these repositories, what we have done at Disney is we don't break them up just by the company as Disney as a whole. We look at the franchise. So Star Wars, you're over here, Marvel's here, you know, princesses are over here. Because the same word can be translated or used very specific in very different ways. Not only have we done this with text, we've done this for audio, images, and video. So people can get an idea of what they're looking at, and potentially for websites or for marketing, they can go in and pull from this bank and say, I want to use this. And in that bank, it has contact information and some metadata. And so what they have to do is they can go, oh, I want to use this in my website. They contact the person and they go, the franchise owner, can I do it? And they can get approved or not. So they're not searching for assets for what they're trying to do. It makes it much easier. Okay. So our best practices for text. One of the things we have found, what we've done is we've separated out text assets from everything we make. The reason why we have done that is games are getting so big. To compile an entire game, sometimes it takes hours, even on a whole big server farm. We don't want to have people wait for 2 hours for a new build for text changes to what they see. This is even worse when your QA people or people who have questions are in the opposite side of the world. They come back with a problem, you inevitably have a question, so that's 12 hours. They answer back, now it's a day, you build it, so now you've lost a day and a half. So what we have done is we have pulled it out of the actual build process. QA people can now see their changes live in the game. And on consoles, they don't even have to reboot the game. We just click it and it'll just automatically reload the text and the assets. So they can see it live. They can play around with it all they want. Instantaneous feedback saves a ton of time. Technology, it was a pain in the rear to do, but it was extremely valuable. I talked about it. The other thing we don't want is cutting and pasting. The old way to translate is, well, here's my stuff, put it in a nice little file for our translators, cut it out, paste it, get the translation back. That's all manual. We're trying to get rid of everything. We've tried to automate everywhere we can. I'll go over our kind of where we can do it. And also, we don't email assets anymore. People can miss it. They can miss an email, it gets lost. So your versioning's way off. That happens a lot. So one thing I want to cover too on this is a choice. Do you want to hire translators in-house at your company, or do you want to go out for vendors? Depends on the company. I'm not going to suggest one way or the other. But one thing that you have to learn is how do you interact with them? How do you get the assets? How do you get them back? That's very key on doing that. If the people you want to hire, you want to make sure that they're in tune with all the changes of languages. Language isn't stable, as you all know. It evolves over time. So we want to make sure that we get the latest translations, how people are talking, especially in social media. That's changed linguistics for us, we can tell extremely rapidly. So we'll kind of go over that when I go over global. The other thing to note is, in general, localization QA people, we expect them to have a higher talent level than just any translator. So what they do is they have to go in and say, oh, what you did is wrong, it's not part of our brand. So those people, we tend to keep those in-house because those are our experts and we want them to look at everything. So, the next. For you technologists out there, we've got tech. We couldn't have done this without tech. One of the first things you do is a content management system. So it's no longer a guess of what's where, what has to be done, and that kind of stuff. So you need some sort of content management system. Automation. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on to produce a product for Disney. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of vendors at times hate working with us because we hold the standard really high. And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to automate it. So one of the things we've done is we tag every piece of data with metadata. And one of those is legal or stakeholder approval. They approve it. They've seen, oh, we've looked at it. It looks good. It's fine. So when we do a Marvel toy, Marvel has to go in and look at it. And they've got to approve it. And they can look at it. We've automated it so that it's not a guess of what has changed since the last time they approved it. As soon as something changes, they're notified. They've got to go back in again and approve it. That's really important. So legal approval on that. We've also automated the input and output formats. We don't care what we get in, and we don't care what you want back. So for our developer vendors that we use, we don't care. With one exception, we still don't want them to hard code their text within their game, but it doesn't matter to us. We've seen it all. We have like 131 unique integrations now. So it allows them developers to take it out of their thought. And what they do is they actually put it in their build process. So when they're done for the day, they kick off the build, they go home. In their build process, it automatically sends their text assets to us. We know what we want. We know, oh, we translated, okay, we've got our translations in there. And then their build process will constantly ping back to say, hey, have you got something new for me? And when it does, they automatically get it. Developers now, they don't even have to think about it. They love this because it's all automated. It really, really helps. The other thing we made automatic is font analysis. Missing characters. Can your font support your game or whatever, support all the characters that you're using? This is very, very important for when you have to build a custom character set of your game. Like Japanese, I think there's like 100 key kanji characters that they learn. So some developers just say you're stuck with these 100. We'll allow you to go out as far as you can, as you want, until you're maxed out of memory, and then we'll tell you which ones to call out for more common ones. We just put in a path for this. We can track linguistic errors. One of the big ones is Arabic, how to properly do Arabic. Japanese, there's some very specific rules for that. We've got an automatic system that goes through every translation to see if what they did is correct. And if it isn't, we have somebody look at it, and we can suggest what the problem is with it. So we just submitted a path for that, as we will go through. The other thing we can do is we can predetermine risk areas. We can do this automatically. We get our translations back, or we get our audio back. And we can tell, oh, it's too long, or it's too short. You know, we can set thresholds, especially for particular text. So if you're in a crunch and you can't QA the entire game, I mean, some of these games are huge, like 12 hours of play. You know, and if you want to check text at the very, very end, you don't want to play through the whole thing. So we can make it so that we set thresholds, and QA knows these are the ones I need to look at very carefully for the translation to make sure it'll fit. The other thing is we also track for swear words, what's bad. Sometimes our translators don't know what's bad. For you British people here, I apologize, I'm going to use this word, bugger. We used in a game because it was Bug's Life, and we didn't realize what it meant, and it just went straight through. So we can track for that because that was a mess. So that's kind of stuff. The next one I want to talk about is our images. They are tiny and tough to do. As far as we can tell, it's the second hardest thing to localize. There's so many parts to it. Is there text in there? Like for football games, football a lot of times is broadcast on ESPN. ESPN's not global everywhere, so we can't put ESPN in there. It's just not allowed. Then we have to put something else. So there's a lot that go into images. And artists love style. They always want their stuff to look pretty. I get that. I mean, it makes sense to me. So it's very hard because we like to do it. So how we solved it? Layer your text assets. So what we've done is there's some tools out there you can use where you've got the background you want. What you do is on a different layer, you can put the text, which we can extract out of it. So we can put it into our translation pipeline, put it back in, and then it'll bake it back in when it presses it all down to one for the game to use. So the rule of no text and images, you can do it as long as you have best practices on it. The other way is have a consistent repository for your images. So we force that. So what we do is we automatically scan it. We know what's there. So we can go make sure that everything's approved. Legal can look at it. Marvel can look at it. Lucas for Star Wars. They're the hardest to get anything by. So that's very important. And then the last thing is there are technology that can scan images on what they are. I don't suggest anybody building that. That's extremely hard, but it can be done. Or you can contract them out so you know what's there. Okay, so the next part is I kind of covered the best designs, layer your text assets, make sure it's all in a repository. So images, I mean, once we solved how to extract the text out, so that's good. Woohoo, technology. It's that being able to pull the text out of the image, analyze the repro, you can scan it, and auto-detect when changes happen. Again, that's very, very key because you don't want anything to slip through. The next thing I want to go to is where we find the most value in someone we hire for localization. It's our idea of being able to do a risk analysis based off the design. If you're able to do that, you're worth your weight in gold because you can tell us right away if there's problems. So we've broken down design into two ways to do it. You can do a global design, which is great. It's the easiest to do. You just make your text boxes really big. It's really easy to QA because your text boxes are very big. The only problem is you can't do very much styling on it. It's really big. Any changes you do in one will affect everything else. And it's very simplistic link handling. It looks terrible, to be honest with you. There are use cases for this. I'm not discounting it. In most things that we look at, we will push this design based on timelines and the tech skills of the people. The other one is the regional design, which basically means you're building your asset for a very particular language. You can branch off of that and do your own changes. So you can change the size of the text boxes as you need to. You have more stylistic control on that. Big pro, it looks awesome. It looks so beautiful in the other languages. And it takes the control, the layout to the territory or the person in charge of it. They can go ahead and say, this is the way we think our customers ingest it best. Big problem, branching changes. So if you haven't locked down your design at the master, and then you make changes in your language, and then the master changes again, you could have potential conflict. So we solved some things on that, but that's one of the biggest problems with regional and why most people won't do it. We've had to build extensive back-end technology to handle those cases when the master language is changed after the languages branch off. And again, if you don't have automation on it, it is extremely difficult to manage. You don't want to try doing it on your own. You're going to miss something. Okay, so I want to kind of show this video really quick. And if you can, you don't have to watch it, but listen to the message, the tone of how it's done. Because what we're going to do now is talk about audio.
I freed my imagination. And it started to run and jump and play. It took me on a journey into another world. I crossed an uncrossable desert. I battled the dark side and lived. I can't wait to see where we go next.
Trying to do that video with a language that is rather verbose, and you try to compress it within the exact same time so you don't have to review the background, they're going to sound like chipmunks. It's not going to give you the same feel for it. So that's one of the biggest problems with audio. Obviously, longer audio is a problem to get the same message across. In general, shorter is okay because you can always put in like sound effects in the pauses. Unless it's really, really short, then you're going to act like those old kung fu movies where they say hello and the guy's talking for 5 minutes. So, this is a very simple slide. Hello. In text, you can tell what the hello means because you can kind of see what's going on around it, or you can look at the video. Hello can be said so many different ways to say so many things. Hello, or hello, you know, just talking to kids, or just very different ways to say it. So for audio, when you deal with audio, context is extremely important because there's so many different ways to say this. I mean, same word, but how you say it, very different. So again, I'm going to bring this up again, and I bring it up a lot. Context is everything. Who's speaking? Who's the audience? What's the tone of the message? What's the situation where this line is being said? The biggest problem with that is how far down this rabbit hole do you want to go? It's very deep. Something for Arabic, it matters on the gender of the person speaking, who's the gender of the person who's being spoken to, their relationship in terms of like a caste, or like, is it an older respected elder, or is it somebody else? you could go down as far as you want. We stopped at gender and call it good. Because you could try to do so many different recordings of the same thing that it's impossible. You're going to miss something somewhere. And especially when you talk about scripted audio versus non-scripted. If it's scripted, it's a little bit easier. You can always tell it's always going to be said in this very particular way. Non-scripted is really hard, and you won't necessarily be able to use the same assets because the tone is different. Who you're talking to is a little bit different. So this is the new toy that we're working on. It actually came out last month, and L10n comes out next week. So the beginning of this is all scripted audio. And once you get into the gameplay, it's non-scripted. So what's the best way to do things on it?
One of the Avengers has a message for you. When you're ready to hear it, press the flashing dial on your gear.
So again, it's very scripted.
This is your navigation dial.
This is very easy. We have no problem doing that.
Other locations, make adjustments to your repulsor gear and receive messages from the Avengers.
The problem is once you get into free play and things come out of order, the translation and how you handle audio is very different. We've toyed around for years trying to come up with the best solution for something that can handle free-range audio so you can reuse the same assets. Depending on the product, we get some good results and some not. But that's the thing that I have to face now on the toys that I work on. So I have to be able to handle non-scripted audio and context. So and try not to retranslate everything 1,000 times. So best audio or video practices. Again, it's context. I keep bringing that up. You also want to have one recording session. So you have to make sure that you've accounted for things that people need to say or what's in the game. Like for instance, Toy Story 3. It's really expensive to bring back Tom Hanks to do the video, to do the audio recording. So we want everything to be there all at once. So we don't have to call them in, because technically there's typically a flat fee to bring somebody in. When we did a game in Arabic, the flat fee to bring in this very important actor was $100,000. So if we had to bring him back because we missed a line, the line might have cost us $1, but it's still $100,000 just to bring him in. So make it a one recording session. And also, one of the things we found out is if you put something on the screen to tell somebody to do something, like go to your left, go to your left, go to your left, people who use it kind of get annoyed. But if you've got an audio line saying the exact same thing, go to your left, go to your left, go to your left, you can actually see the agitation in these people because they keep hearing it. So we want to do wild tapes, have the person say something in different ways. It really helps. So if you have to nag them about something, at least you can do it in different ways. Or even like when you hit something, it's not always the same grunt or groan. It can be very different. So that's one thing that we found out. And as a fallback, if you're designing something that has audio, but you also have a visual interface for the user, one of your fallbacks could be have your recorder person say, follow the instructions on your screen. It's a cop-out, but if you miss something, at least it's on the screen. Okay, technology. Check format and timing thresholds. So what I mean by that is, sometimes when we get recordings or video back, they're not in the right format. They've recorded the audio wrong, like it's in mono instead of stereo. Or instead of being 5 seconds long, the audio line is 25 seconds long. So we can automatically track those thresholds to make sure it's a good one. So we don't break the game or your website. For video, there are tools out there that are actually pretty good that can lip sync off the text. So you can pass the text files and they'll be able to lip sync to it pretty well, actually, just based off the text. The technology, it's done by a third party whose name I forget, but they're working on other languages, because right now they just do it for English, but they're working on that. So that's pretty cool, actually. The other thing we want to do is generate a localization style map. This is very important for audio and video. because what we have found is a lot of our actors or actresses who come in to do recordings, they're like, what is this about? You know, I need some more information. They want a lot of context. So we provide like a stylistic pack that says, here's kind of the information on it, here's kind of like what's done in the past, so they can stay with the same tone of the franchise, because Disney's very, very particular about protecting their franchise. So you just can't go use Mickey Mouse in any way. Like, I don't think there'll ever be a time where they'll allow Mickey Mouse to get blown up into 1,000 pieces. So they're very, very cautious about that. So the next thing that we want to talk about, this is the really big one, is integrated experience. There's so many ways that users now ingest content. Phones, books, the cloud is supposed to be the internet, console games, those are our toys over there. There's just so many ways of one particular product you can reach out to people. So what you want to do is be able to, as much as possible, share the same resource across all of these things, but realize there'll be slightly differences in how things are done. Like books, they tend to simplify things more for kids, because kids can obviously understand a lot more than they can read. So the bigger problem with this huge integrated experience, so like Star Wars, let's take Star Wars for instance. There's a movie, there are games, they're building new theme park section in Disney. You know, there's this big global experience of, here it is, there's all these different ways we know people will want to use it. The biggest problem that we're finding is that depending on which platform you're releasing to, changes potentially what the main language is. And the biggest example of this is Spanish for North America. There's, you know, Mexican Spanish, there's just all kinds of them. What we found is that, like for consoles, they like one particular Spanish, but the website games, they like another. So I've got the console people saying, marketing people say, we want to release in this. The website people are saying, but we want to release in this other language that's similar because we're going to make more money that way. So the problem is if you try to integrate those two together, there's a disconnect. Because one is on one stylistic of Spanish and one's on the other. So you have to kind of work out that within your brand, what's best overall, or figure out just to say, well, there's going to be a disconnect. It's not going to be so great. That depends on the product. It's up to the product to decide. We can help them decide, help them with that. So marketing. Marketing loves the fact that we store everything in a central point because they can pull it out. Say, hey, we've got this. We're going to throw it on a poster or throw it in a commercial. You know, it's fantastic for them. They can use it. They've got all the approvals and stuff like that. So that's one of the key things for an integrated experience. Is you want to be able to market it as cheaply as possible because you're blasting across from all the different ways, like toys. Go buy our toys or whatever. The other thing is a concept of a global ID for a user. If you really want to be able to say, oh, look, I've got like the wristbands that they're doing at Disney World. We know the user has gone on this ride, or go in. Think of the applications you can do with that from a global level. You can say, oh, you can partner with a store who has exclusives on toys, and you can like check in with your wristband or something, or say that you've gone there. So there's incentive to go to different places. Like one of the things you could do, like for Infinity, is potentially you could take one of these characters and take it to the park with you, and you can put it on a stand within the park, and then you unlock something like within your game or something. The options to do that are amazing from a marketing standpoint of what you can do. But you all need to have a global ID tied to a specific person, so that experience for that person it's not conflicting with somebody else. One of the things also with a global experience that you're trying to do is, like Star Wars, it's a global phenomenon. One of the things we kind of want to do, or we're exploring at Disney, and I think a lot of companies are, is to have a global chat system. So I'm a fan in Russia, I want to talk to someone in China, and I don't need a translator, because I like this person, they're friends, we play similar styles or whatever. So Google's working on this really hard, is to have a system that can automatically and faithfully translate automatically from one language to another. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can play with friends, loosely, wherever, because you think they speak the same language, because it's translating back to you. We did a very simple system on that. We hired a bunch of linguists, computational linguists. I love those people, by the way. It's insanely smart. To help us build that system out. So that's something that I think a lot of companies are looking towards, is reaching out to everybody. Obviously, there's a ton of challenges trying to put it all together. You know, territories might not like certain brands, or they might like different characters, even from within the same movie. Something might be more popular here than it is somewhere else. So there's that. And then also, one of the things that we have to do at Disney is we spend a lot of money and time on guest experience. We want to make sure user experiences are always happy. So we have a huge guest experience team. So for every product, if we try to do something like this that's integrated or global, they need information on how to support people who have questions on it. So we spend a lot on that. So that's something to bring in. I added a little bit thing on here, reading this brochure. It says break into localization. So from our standpoint at Disney, we look at translators. We look for QA, localization QA. Those are more experienced people, ones who can track the areas of translators. And the other thing we do now is we actually can objectively grade translations. So when QA goes in and they see a translation mistake, they can say, it was wrong because of this reason. And then what we can do is at the end of the project, we can evaluate the translator and look at everything they've done and see what mistakes they've made. If they keep making the same simple mistakes, we can train them. If it's just something blatantly bad, you know, we can track that. So technology is your friend on that, unless you don't want Big Brother to look over you. Producers or designers. Typically at Disney, we have producers who focus totally on the product, and then we have a localization producers that handle all the localization, but they're in really close contact. But if you're a producer who can do both, very cool, we like you even more, because then you start thinking from the beginning, I got to localize this product, what's it going to take? You know? We also hire, Disney likes computational linguists. They're typically one of the most expensive people on the face of the earth to hire, a really good one. But they're very good. We like them because they can tell us like linguistic patterns. So a lot of the automation we do for some of the things that we can trap, we've talked to computational linguists. They've helped us develop this system. And then obviously technology. You have a talk about that tomorrow. But usually it's front-end display to the users or the back-end stuff to support all this automation we've built. And I guess the most important thing is, why go into localization? Well, that's a good question. I kind of got forced into it, but I like it now. It is fun. Remember the first slide was discussed when people were told I got to localize a project. You get that kind of thing? Most people don't care about it, but if you're the one who can champion in to the finish line saying, I can localize your product, they'll love you. It's very important. So one of the things I always tell people is producers who come or vendors say, I don't want to localize this. I said, well, for an extra 10 to 20 minutes of your work to tweak things just a little bit this way, I can give you an extra 20% on top of that for your return of investment. So basically, if you were making $100,000 a year, would you spend an extra hour to earn an extra $20,000? Pretty simple. So if you're that type of person, who can look at that kind of things and determine that, that's really good. You make money, so that's good. The other thing that's really important is being able to say no. Don't just localize everything. That was one of the beginning slides. Because in the end, if you just keep saying, I can localize everything, it's great, it's great, it's great, not a good choice. No one's going to trust your judgment. So it's okay to say no. So like on my project for this, it was built not for localization. So version 2, which is Star Wars, we built it so it can be localized. So that's one of the things, is being able to say no. Another reason why is you couldn't release a product to a wider global audience. I mean, it's pretty cool when you go to another country and you see your product that you worked on a shelf, or that you see posters of it, or in a movie. That is a really cool feeling, like I had a part in this, bringing this product to this. If you have that design strike force team that we have, you can actually affect the design of the products. You're not like the back-end person who's just trying to figure out ways to make it to the territory. You can actually be somebody who actually affects the design, how the content is developed. So that, a lot of people really love that, especially designers. And if you're technologists, it's really cool to design technology and back-end services that people think you couldn't do. Like the whole automation process on this, being able to track things and putting in gates. It's really cool to develop a system where, again, instead of weeks worth of work, you can do it in 5 minutes. And the idea that behind it is we've gone from developers who say, I don't want to localize, to I don't care. Whatever languages you want, throw it out. We don't care. It's an extra 5 minutes of work. And we just have to change a little bit of settings. So from a technology standpoint, to be able to build something like that is pretty awesome. And the other thing is, I know this is appealing to a lot of younger people. I've done it, and I'm way over it. You get to travel to places. If you're the person who understands the product, you know the area, you know how you talk to the developer, you actually, a lot of times, will send you there to talk to them, and not once, twice. So a lot of times, so they've sent me, they're going to Japan, Stockholm, France, I've been to England a whole bunch, all over. So for the younger people, I'm sure that is appealing. For me, I just want to stay home and go to bed. So that's kind of like what we're doing. So we started out with how we got to where we are. This is what we're striving for now. A global integrated experience for users, and to do it very effectively and as cost efficient as possible. There's no point in duplicating the artwork for this person for the website, or using for the model for your toy. You know, reuse assets as much as possible. So that's what we're doing. So my speech is done. Is there any questions? If not, you can always, yes.
Any plans on making that technology available? Or is it?
So that's a very good question. So Universal
announces the logo and everything. I bet everyone will buy it.
Universal approached us to use it in exchange for something we wanted from them. We actually said no.
Okay.
We have no interest in marketing this because it's actually pretty powerful. It took us a while and thought went into it. And it's just not a model that we're very interested in doing right now.
Okay.
But yeah, my wife always says, gosh, if you made this and sold it to Disney, you could have retired. And I'm like, well, yeah, probably, but that's all right. But we're happy to give suggestions. Or you can always ping on LinkedIn. I love seeing localization and the effort across all of the products. So as long as you're not asking me something very specifically about how can I make, let's see, what's one of our universal competitors, or like a DC Comics, how we can make those better? That I won't help you with. Anything else? If not, thank you for listening. If you ever have any questions, you can find me on LinkedIn. And I have some business cards here, so thank you for your time.